Hey folks, welcome to another edition of CloudFormation Wednesdays. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, so I'm hoping that this kickstarts a new series. I want to work on something that I actually did for a customer, but it's an interesting little use case, and I'm trying to multitask here. Just give me 1 second. Running a little behind today. I taught an AWS class and everything feels a little behind schedule today. Okay, there we go. I think we're set. Got a drink ready to go. Let's try this again. So I thought we would work on something that I've been plugging away on for a little bit of time, customer related stuff. And I just thought it would be an interesting use case. And what it is, let me see if the stream pad's still working. There we go. Okay. So what we have is a situation where we have an application and we need to be able to handle two distinct types of traffic. It's all going to the same domain. Okay. So the first thing is we have to handle HTTPS traffic. Okay. And we have to handle TCP traffic. And this took a little bit of time to get worked out, and I iterated through a bunch of different possible solutions, just couldn't find something that worked. And then I stumbled across the Global Accelerator. If you're not familiar, the Global Accelerator is a service that allows us to basically route traffic, and it gives us two static IP addresses, and then we can create, to me it feels very similar to a load balancer. So I can create listeners, and those listeners are configured for different ports and protocols and things like that. And this solved my problem, or the challenge that I was having when I needed to deal with this situation where I have a single domain and I need to handle both HTTPS traffic and TCP traffic. So let me show you what I think we're going to build. You think of a client, right? So this is some sort of, could be a person, could be some other system. And what's happening is this client is going to either send us HTTPS traffic, so just standard traffic, right? Or traffic on some sort of TCP port. Doesn't really matter what. And the solution that I came up with was we put a global accelerator here. So instead of having maybe a more typical deployment, maybe with a load balancer or something like that, because I'm having to handle both these types of traffic, a global accelerator worked really well. So the global accelerator becomes the entry point. And behind all of this, I have an EC2 instance. Okay. And this EC2 instance is listening on HTTP. And let's just make a port up. Let's go with 9898. Okay. So this is TCP traffic. Let's try that again. TCP traffic. Okay. What I was able to do is something like this. So for the TCP traffic, we can set a listener on the global accelerator and send that traffic right through to our EC2 instance. Solve that first problem. Now, with the HTTP traffic, I also wanted to be able to run all of the traffic through a WAF. Okay. And as far as I know, at least right now, you can't attach a WAF to a global accelerator. You can't attach a WAF to an EC2 instance. So how did I fix that? What I did was I put an application load balancer here. And I configured the listener for this to send HTTP traffic that way. And that allowed me to hang a WAF off of the load balancer. And then that's our standard target group configuration. Everything ends up on the EC2 instance. Okay. So what I thought we would do is we would walk through this. Oh, a couple other things. We've got security groups here and security groups here, just so you kind of know what we're going to build, right? So I thought what we could do over, I don't think we'll get all this finished tonight, is build out this solution like what we've done in the past and just kind of work through all the templates and figure out how this might work. And we're going to build it all from scratch. Okay. So that's kind of what we're going to work on. I went ahead and created our project folder, and I had a little bit of fun with this before I started. You'll notice there's a Q directory here, and I've set up some context files for Q that if we end up using Q as part of our development process, I've given it some rules and told it a little bit about the project that we're working on. And I actually generated this project template. A lot of times when I'm working on project for customers, the projects are different, but the structure that I want to use for my CloudFormation templates is pretty much all the same. So I've been playing around a bit with, is it code with Claude or Claude code? I'm not quite sure, to be honest. And I've been playing around with that a little bit just to get some exposure to it. And I've got a bunch of aliases and things like that set up on my Mac just to kind of streamline my workflow. So I asked Claude to kind of look through another project template that I had and generate basically a bootstrapping script for me. I had some built already that I had done by hand, and I was just like, hey, this is good excuse to try it and see what it did. And it actually did a pretty good job. So I'm hoping that this project has the templates in a way that are usable for us, and I don't spend a bunch of time trying to unravel what it did, because I literally did this between when the class ended, grabbing some quick dinner, and being here for roughly 7 o'clock. So we're winging this at this point. All right. So like we normally do, this is one of the interesting things it did for me. It created a nice little sort of template that we can use. We generally almost always follow the same structure, right? We've got our description at the top. We've got some standard parameters we use. If you've ever watched any of these projects before, these streams before, you've seen these templates. So we've got our parameters, our resource section, and our outputs. So I'm going to try to use this skeleton for all of our deployment work here, just to see how it works. Okay. Thinking about that diagram that I just pulled together, logically, I think it makes the most sense to create the accelerator first, even though we won't have any targets for it. Let's go here and we're going to say modules, networking, ga.yaml. Okay, so this will become our global accelerator template. And I'm going to try this. So we're just going to yank our skeleton template here, dump it here. And this stack, see, it even came up with sort of prompts for me as I'm building this out. So what does this stack demonstrate? Global accelerator. Okay. I also gave it some context, and I loved how, like, I basically said, I'm using these templates for live streaming and yada, yada, yada. And it kind of put in comments for stream viewers and stuff like that. So I thought it was kind of neat. All right. So we've got this. It put placeholder for conditions. We're not going to worry about conditions. And the other thing that I need to update is we are going to leave, obviously we're not deploying anything into production, so we'll pull that down. The rest of this is pretty standard, right? We use these tags everywhere. And then outputs we'll worry about later. We'll leave the placeholders here for the time being. And really what we need first is our global accelerator. I have no idea what the type definition is for this. We got to look it up. And then obviously we're going to have one or more properties to define here. Let me just get, I've got a web browser here. Yeah, it's ready to go. And let me just find the CloudFormation Global Accelerator. And let me just show you what I'm looking at. So this is the documentation for the Global Accelerator. It's relatively simple, right? So is it turned on or not? Are we providing IP addresses so we can bring our own IPs here? We're not going to do that, so we'll let Amazon assign that. It supports both IPv4 and IPv6, so you can either, just cover IPv4 or do a dual stack. We'll do IPv4. Give it a name and some tags, okay? You can see there's some additional components that we need to set up, like listeners and endpoint groups. But setting up the actual accelerator is easy. So let's go through this. I'm going to drag this, maybe. Try that again. I'm just going to drag it out of the way a little bit so I can see the parameters that I need as I type. Okay. So the type definition, rearrange my desktop just a bit. There we go. And then what do we say? I don't think enabled is actually required. It says required no, but we're going to set it to true. We don't need IP addresses. I wonder if IP address type is required. It's also not required, but I don't want to bother with IPv6, so we're going to say address type is IPv4. And then the name, and we're gonna create this name using the sub-intrinsic function and then tags. This is what I definitely should add this to my my template, because we use the same set of tags every time, right? I'll type these out once, and then we can just copy and paste them everywhere. What's the one I'm missing? Oh, project. I use project to refer to the location of the project in my GitLab server. Otherwise, I will lose it for sure. Okay, so we're going to delete these. These outputs, they're just placeholders, like what's the name of the stack, what's our environment. I'm going to pull this out. We don't really need that. Stack name can't hurt, and it shouldn't cause anything to not deploy. So we'll leave that where it is. And then we need to create this. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna think of another tag that we can use up here to help us build this. So environment owner project. I don't think this is a great name. No, it's not a great name. Actually, why don't we just hard code this part? We'll do this. CFN dash Wednesday, right? So CloudFormation Wednesday dash see, that won't work because it's gonna be like a path to how I can find that. I still need something else. What could I call this? Why don't I do this? GitHub path. Okay, we'll change this up. So description, path to the project on, not GitHub, I'll call it GitLab. Okay, and this here is going to be project name. Yeah, this makes more sense. So we can do this. Project. And then we're going to do environment. And then we're going to use GA as sort of a resource type identifier. Okay. So that's good. That means, though, we have to change something else. Whoops. Let's try that again. If we go here, see how I have these set up? This is, again, from our little demo. Project is going to be, why don't we call this Twitch Accelerator. Okay, so we'll tag everything like that. The names are going to get a little long, but that's okay. And then we'll say GitLab, I think I said path. But let me just grab this off the GitLab server. It's going to be /CFN Wednesday /Global Accelerator. All right. Now you can see Claude had some fun creating these for us, okay? And we're going to have to fix these up. Not fix them up, but I'm gonna get rid of the new lines a bit. And we're going to say template body. I haven't tested these, so I'm hoping they match with what we have in the past. It should have pulled the project information from my previous CloudFormation Wednesday when we were working on Bedrock. So I'm hoping these are all okay. What we're going to say is modules, networking, ga.yaml. So that takes care of that. And then I'm going to combine these dash region. And we're just going to make sure that we've got that set up. I wonder why it doesn't like this. Pro tip, always validate templates for deploying to catch your syntax errors early. I love it. I don't know why it's flagging that, but anyways. And now this part, stack name, we're gonna change this format a bit. So we're gonna say, normally I do something like this, project, environment, make it very similar to the name. So that's our, let's make this too. We're gonna say GA deployment or GA deploy. Only goes on main. It really doesn't like whatever is happening here. We're going to try it and see. And for the time being, you know, I think I'm going to leave this. I don't want to have to try to go back and fix it later. So we're going to say whether this works or not on the first run. We'll see. Networking, ga.yaml. So that takes care of that. That'll pull our stack name. This is for our change sets. These I'm going to sort of consolidate it a little bit. So we have GitLab path equals GitLab path and project equals project. Sort of that. I'm going to do the same here. Shorten these up just so there's not so many carriage returns. Once we do this once, it should be okay. Yeah, I'm going to make it exactly the same. GitLab path. Clear all that out, and we'll do the same thing. -- region, $region. Okay. We'll leave the fun emojis in here. We'll probably end up putting this in its own includes file, but I think for the time being, to test it out and see what happens, we'll leave it like this. So let's commit this. We'll just call it, it's really the first commit at this point, outside of the test project. So we are working off main, I know. That's fine. For what we're doing. Okay, so let me show you the error message we're getting. I'm not surprised. So it says jobs validate script config should be a string or a nested array of strings up to 10 levels deep. I think what's happened is our Gen AI tool is a little too fancy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That looks short enough, right? Up to 10 levels deep. Let's get rid of the where it's complaining. We're really just testing at this point. Once we get this to work the first time, we'll use a branch. Yeah, it still doesn't like that. So okay, script. Okay, let's just try something. Let's just comment all of these out and see at least if the validate job runs. Yeah, it's still complaining. Okay, so now it's into the GA section. I think we just have too many echoes. I bet you there's a way we can combine these, but it's fun and all. But let's do this. Let's just leave one echo. Let's see if we can leave those two. What did we do? We're testing deploy again, I guess. not helpful commit messages, but okay, there we go. So far too many echoes. Like I said, we could probably fix that up. So the validation worked. It's a good start. This gave us an error. So you can see here, oh, we're not passing in some of the tags properly. We changed those tag names, I think. All right, so let's go back to here. And let's do the same thing. Let's see if we can do up here, we'll say echo. And we'll leave this. Okay. This is going to cause a problem anyways, I think, because we're going to have a lot of CloudFormation commands to run there. So let's just commit this. And then let's actually fix the issue. So it complained in the GA deploy of what? Tags 3 values, value 0, valid min length is 1. So that generally means value 0, 1, 2, 3. So it's not liking the owner tag? Okay, so there's the owner tag. Project, GitLab path, project. Let's close our skeleton for now. Close that for now. And we've set values for these, right? Let's pull these up here. So there's our project. There's GitLab path. Let's just make sure we did this in here. Parameter overrides. Owner email equals owner email. Environment equals environment. GitLab path equals GitLab path. Project. Okay, and let's just make sure. So what do we got there? 2, 3, 4, 5 parameter values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameter values here. I don't like the spaces. I know it's weird. We'll do this. Okay. So that's okay. Do we have 5 down here? 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. The only thing we don't have in here is GitLab path, but that shouldn't matter. Okay, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna test Q here. So we're gonna fire up Q. These are the types of errors that just can be challenging to troubleshoot. So I'm gonna say, can you help us troubleshoot GitLab CI script when the deployment job runs? What's the deployment job called again? Just GA deploy. Right? Let's see what it does. These are these little fiddly problems that hopefully this can help us with. So it's just checking out our files, reading the CI script. Oh, look at. So again, if you've ever watched this stream before, you know that the vast majority of our issues can be categorized in 2 buckets. Number 1 is spelling mistakes. And this is a great example of that. I typed patch instead of path. Okay, so we have a mismatch there. The second issue that we generally run into, permissions related, right? We just don't have the permissions to do something. And then we're going to use my favorite tool, CloudTrail, to kind of reverse engineer the error and figure out what we're missing. I'm going to let Q fix this problem for us. Okay, so that's what I love these tools for this. So hopefully now we've got this correct. Let's try it again. Let's call this actually a fix CI typo in parameter name. I'm too zoomed in. I just looked over at the Twitch stream and just like a giant head. It's a little better. Okay, well, it didn't air out right away. Let's see what it's doing. Okay, great. So it's running the deploy. If we jump over to our demo account, I think I'm in the right region, CA Central 1. And here's our, this is quite the name, right? So Twitch Accelerator demo. This is our environment, and then our identifier. So let's say change sets. Oh, we're missing a flag in there. Now, you know what? In a demo environment like this, that's fine, right? It deployed automatically. But what I normally like to do is generate a change set. And a change set, if you're not familiar, is great in CloudFormation because it allows you to compare sort of what you have right now versus what it'll do if you actually implement the change set. So it's a nice way just sort of to check. Not a big deal here in a demo environment for a Twitch stream, but definitely in like production accounts, we're always going to use that. And in most dev accounts for my customers, we use it all as well, just as another layer for a check, right? Just to make sure that nothing unintentional happens. Because the thing you have to remember with CloudFormation is, I'll show you, if I remember some later time in the stream, I'll show you kind of what I'm thinking about, but it's making API calls on your behalf, right? And changing sort of properties of certain resources, it can do that with no interruption at all. Sometimes it'll change a property and it will interrupt the service, maybe temporarily, but the changes that you really have to be careful of is when it can't change or it can't make that change without replacing that resource. And obviously, you know, in our silly example here, I probably don't want to delete that global accelerator, right? I want to make sure it stays there, especially if you can imagine it's part of a deployment already. So I'll show you what I mean in a second. But it deployed. So that means we've got a resource. Here's the ARN to our global accelerator. And here's our global accelerator with our 2 static IP addresses. And those are coming from Amazon. Okay. Here's our crazy DNS name for our global accelerator. We're all good. This accelerator really isn't doing anything right now. We'll add some listeners to it so we can actually accept inbound connections. Hey, Common, thanks for stopping by, man. I appreciate it. We're working on a little project that I actually did for a customer where we've got global accelerator in sort of as the entry point, and then we're going to set up listeners so we can handle both TCP and HTTP traffic and send them eventually all to a single destination, but we want to be able to kind of route those 2 different types of requests slightly differently. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Okay, so we've got the listener here, or sorry, we've got the accelerator here. Let's build this out a little more, and we're going to add the 2 listeners we need. So we need an HTTPS listener because we want to accept that secure traffic for our website, and then we want a TCP listener. Let me pull up the global accelerator documentation again. So this is what we did. And now what we need is the 2 listeners. And again, these are relatively painless to do. Let's see if we can figure this out. Obviously, we need to refer a listener or associate a listener with the ARN of our accelerator. So that's required. You can do some fancy stuff like client affinity. So we can say, a certain user, right? Common, you're here. So I can sort of say, hey, if you know who this is, I want you to basically route all of those requests to a specific endpoint. So you've got some really fine-grained control here if you needed it. We're not going to worry about that today, so we'll leave that as none. And then our port ranges. We'll have to have that, and then our protocols. So again, pretty simple. Let's see if we can get this coded up. Okay. Let's do our TCP listener first. And I'm just going to make a comment here so I can remember. TCP, what did I say in my little diagram? I think I said 9898. And I'll just put the port number in here. Now, I like to do that because what if later on I need a different port, right? What if I need 9899 all of a sudden? I want these logical IDs to be unique. So I generally, if I'm doing stuff like this, I'll put the port number on it. Okay, let me just drag this window around again. So the first thing is we need accelerator ARN. And I don't know what the format is for this. So we'll just put a placeholder there. We already mentioned we're not going to do client affinity. I start typing it. We're not going to do client affinity, so we need port ranges. Not rangers, ranges. And again, I'm just going to put a placeholder. Not sure exactly the format it needs there. And then protocol. Now, what I've found is, like if you try to do a network load balancer and you put TCP here, it won't work. It wants the number for the protocol versus a load balancer that will use TCP. Let me see, what's it expecting? Okay, it's expecting TCP or UDP in uppercase. So that's an easy one. We can do that. Let me just check in the documentation here. So I need the ARN of the accelerator. And if I just show you the documentation, what I generally do for this is see here on return values. So this is the accelerator that we created. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly it, Common. At the beginning of the stream, I mentioned that a global accelerator, it feels very similar to a load balancer if you're used to that. Listeners and targets. We have a listener here and we have what's called an endpoint group, but it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go to return values and then see, where is it? Click here, see what it tells us. So the ref returns what we want, the ARN. So that means in my template, I can just do this. What did we call it? We called it Global Accelerator. And I don't know, well, you know what? Look at, I've totally messed this up. I have to have a type definition. That would be helpful. Global Accelerator listener. And, oops, not TCP listener. My auto fill is not perfect. Properties. And then all of this needs to go in a tab, right? So let's fix that up. There we go. That's a little better. What I'm going to do, and I don't really know if I need this, but also by default, CloudFormation will try to deploy the resources in your template in parallel. Now, there are some rules in CloudFormation where it knows, hey, to do this, I need that first. So you don't necessarily need depends on statements all the time. I tend to add them, maybe even in situations where I don't need them. And I think in the end, what it is for me is later on when I come back and I look at these templates, I don't know about all of you, but what often happens is, you know, I'll work on this week and deploy it. And then even maybe a couple days from now or a couple weeks, I'll come back and I'll be like, what was I doing here? Right. And I just find when I add these types of statements and little comments and stuff, it just helps jog my memory a little better than it would if I just looked at this. Sometimes I'm like, are you sure I wrote this? I don't think I wrote this. So we're going to just say this depends on the global accelerator. Okay. Now our port ranges, it showed a structure. Yeah. So this is very similar to if you're building like a security group. So I'm going to say from port 9898 to port 9898. So we're just going to cover that one port. And then I think the only other thing is what we've got here, the protocol. Okay, so let's do this. Oh, I was going to start a different branch. I forgot. We'll do one more commit to main. I will say feature added TCP. Push that. All right, we passed the validation phase. Always good. Now see what it's doing. It is generating a change set, but there's an extra parameter or flag. Yeah, let's call it a parameter that we would normally set. So it's generating the change set, but executing it automatically for us. And normally, like I said before, normally what I would do is generate the change set and leave it there until a human can look at it, right? So now, like, I can deploy it and I can have somebody verify the changes before they actually are implemented. But for today, we're living, you know, by the seat of our pants here. What's the saying? I don't know what I'm trying to say. We're living dangerously. There we go. And we're just letting it run. Okay. Now we should have another resource. Yep. So there's our listener. We jump back over here. There's our listener. It's all healthy right now because we don't have any endpoint groups. So slightly misleading. Doesn't have anywhere to send the traffic. Okay. Let's do the same thing. And we're going to do, I'm going to call this, just to keep it the same way, HTTPS listener 443. And I'm actually just going to copy all of this. How many lines is that? 9? Still depends on that. All that's the same. And we're just going to listen on 443. And let's just put a comment in here. I'll just say TCP 443. Okay. And then, like I said, let's put a comment so we know why we're doing this. We need to accept traffic on TCP 9898 and route directly to our EC2 instance. We also need to accept traffic on TCP 443 HTTPS and route traffic to our ALB. Okay, so that's kind of why we're doing these. Let's commit this one. And we're going here. Okay, so there's the change set. If we very quickly look here, oh, it's already gone. Went really fast. So now we've got 2 listeners. If we do a oh, it's already here too. So there's our TCP 443 and 9898. I'm pretty sure this is what I need. We can fix it later if we need to. All right. So if we go back here, we don't have any outputs at this point. And the way I generally, well, I guess we have the name of our CloudFormation stack. Okay, it's a good placeholder. What we need to do now is we need to generally, there's a couple different ways you can handle CloudFormation. The first way you can handle CloudFormation, this is really typical when you first get started, is you just put everything in one template. There's nothing wrong with that, but as your projects get more complicated, and to kind of borrow from the theme that I mentioned earlier on, you know, you go back and look at that project later on and it's 1,000 lines long. You're kind of like, oh, where do I start? Where do I find this resource, right? It can be challenging to troubleshoot it later in the future. It's also challenging if you give that project to somebody else. You move on to something else and you're like, hey, you maintain this now. And they're looking at it going, what is this? So to combat that sort of giant template, you kind of have 2 strategies. You have this idea of a parent-child relationship, and that's where we have sort of a main stack that then calls all of our other stacks, okay? I used to do it that way, but now what I do is this. It's called, oh, what do they call it? I can't remember. There is a name for it, but really what I do is I create exports from this template, and I use those as imports in my other template. I'm accomplishing the same thing. It's called a chain stack. There you go. So you've got a nested stack where a main template calls, you know, the parent template calls the child template, one or more child templates, right? And then that's a nested stack. And then you've got a chain stack where outputs from one stack become inputs for the next. There we go. I remember now. they both accomplish the same thing in the sense that it allows us to break our larger projects into individual, smaller, easier to maintain templates. But for me, the parent-child thing, I don't know, it just doesn't compute in my brain as well. And when they introduced this sort of chained stack approach, it just worked better for my brain. So what we're going to do is we are going to, we may not be able to cover all of the exports that we need here, but we're going to create a couple, and then we can use those exports later on as imports for our other templates. Okay? So let me just check the documentation again, because every resource has different outputs or exports that you can return values, sorry. So if we go here, see the return values, we can get the ARN, the DNS name, dual stack if you have it, and then addresses. I think for what we're doing at this point, we really just need the ARN. And you can get the ARN by running the ref intrinsic command or the get attribute intrinsic command. We'll just use ref. Why type extra characters if we don't have to, right? Especially for me when I'm challenged to actually type correctly. So what I generally do is I just match the logical names that I create in my templates. So I'm going to say Global Accelerator ARN. Okay. I'm not going to worry about a description because we name it well enough that I think it works. So we're going to say ref Global Accelerator. So that should pull in what we want. And then I am going to borrow this. See this? This came from Claude when I asked it to kind of set up our project for us based on our previous ones. I am going to change one thing. So it's going to pull in the name of our stack, which is maybe a little long, but I think it'll work. And then I'm just going to say ARN. Okay, and now that we've got something other than the placeholder, we'll just get rid of that. I still didn't create another branch. Okay. Feature. Added output. And what should happen now is really nothing at all. We should see our pipeline run. If we go to CloudFormation, this is the original one, which we just removed because we're not going to use that, I doubt. There we go. So now what I can do is I can use this export name as an import later on in a different template if I need it. And I'm not sure if I'm going to need it later on, but I'll just create a couple basic ones as we go on things that sort of feel like I might need those values somewhere else. All right, so that is sort of step one done. And if I flip back to my little quick scratch pad diagram we made at the beginning, that is this guy done, I think, as far as we can take it. You know what I'm realizing? All of these resources here need a VPC, and we don't have a VPC yet. I have a VPC in this account, but I'm using it for a class that I'm teaching this week. So I don't want to muck around with that. So we need to create a VPC first for this. And we can borrow from one of our other projects. So we've created, let's just say, more than one VPC in our day. So we're going to add this to the networking project, okay, or the networking folder. And I'm going to use some magic to grab a template that we've used before. I just have to find. We've done this with some of the other demos. I just won't be able to find it now that I want it. Just bear with me a sec. Okay. And we're going to build this sort of the way that I would always build a VPC, like if I was building it for a customer. So we're going to cut and paste this. And this is kind of the standard template that I would always use for a VPC. It gives us a VPC with multiple availability zones and public subnets, private subnets, those kind of good things that we would want to see in a VPC. And I'm hoping we can just paste it there. Now, this, I'm gonna clean this up because this has got metadata and stuff that, to be honest, we don't really need right now. So that's fine. That's fine. These are the standard tags that we're using, right, for the sort of project going forward. But if you remember, I had some other ones. So environment, we want to change this. So we're going to default to demo. Why don't we just actually grab this? What is 7 lines? We'll just replace environment with this guy. That's fine. That's fine. We're going to change this to Twitch. And we had a couple other things here. Project and GitLab path. So let's grab those two. Dump that here. Okay, so that should cover off sort of the new tags that we're using. And these are the standard ones. We need all of these for the VPC. So I'm not going to touch any of these. And you'll notice, I'll explain it. We've got public subnets, 2 of them. So we're spreading those across multiple availability zones. 2 private subnets, doing the same thing, spreading those across availability zones. And 2 protected subnets. So what do I mean by a protected subnet? I use that term for things, resources that I do not want to allow communication to anything outside of a VPC. Right. So a really common thing that I would put in a protected subnet would be a database or something like that. Okay. And then we use this little flag, is public, yes or no. And this is just going to basically say, do I want to connect this VPC to the outside world? And then we've got all of these things. We could make a bunch of changes here to kind of follow the new standards that I have. I'll do this offline though. No sense in watching me change tags. That would be not a lot of fun. So let's go GitLab, and I'm going to add a new guy here. It's 2 lines. Module network. So it's just our standard validation thing. And already this is going to get long. So I think we are going to pull in these include statements. And I'm just going to call it include demo instead. And we need this path. So we'll say includes demo.yaml. Okay. And all we need to do there is grab all of this. Make this window a little smaller. So I'm just going to pull out this whole, actually we'll grab this whole thing. What is that, 25 lines? And we'll dump that here. Okay. So there's our GA deploy. So this is for our, let's put some comments in here. Deploy the Global Accelerator. Okay, that's fine. Let's do this. Deploy a standard 2AZ VPC. And I'm going to borrow from this guy. I'm going to figure this out because this is kind of fun, but there's far too many echo statements everywhere. It's one thing I've noticed about Gen AI is it loves emojis, right? It's constantly putting emojis. What are your thoughts on CloudFormation versus Terraform? I'm currently with Terraform. Didn't get along with CF much. Maybe I should have given him. Okay, so you know what? Honestly, it's very much a personal choice. I have been using CloudFormation for so long that actually, sorry, I'm realizing my mod grabbed that comment for some reason. But I was just answering a question about CloudFormation versus Terraform. I think it's a total personal choice thing. I've been working with CloudFormation for so long now. It's just comfortable for me. The other thing that I do like, and I know this will cause, what's the technical word? A kerfuffle. But I don't want to manage state. I don't want to have to think about managing state. I don't want to be worried about my state file if something happens to it. So, you know what? I'm just used to CloudFormation. So I generally start with CloudFormation. Now, having said that, being a consultant, I'm often driven by what the customer wants or what the customer also has experience on. So I kind of move between CloudFormation, Terraform, and CDK. But out of all three of those, CloudFormation is kind of the thing that I have the most experience with. So it's just comfortable for me, and I can kind of start banging out stuff for a customer pretty quickly. Plus, I've got a lot of templates like this VPC one that is generic, and I can kind of reuse it. So I don't know if I have a really personal preference. I think it's just, well, I don't have like any real hard thoughts on it. My personal preference is just the tool I've been using for a while. All right. Okay, so we've got this guy, and I'm going to grab this whole thing. We're just going to say 23 lines, yank those, and we'll change this to VPC deploy. We'll change this following our naming standard to VPC. And as much as I like all these comments, or all these nice little emoji lines, we're going to clean them up. I'm sure we can do this in a more efficient way. In GitLab, there's I'm going to call it a stanza. I don't know exactly what the technical term is for it, but like I can do something like, I'm not going to bother with it today, but I'll test it out like before script, and then I can have it do some stuff for me. And this little chunk of code will run before every script. It's kind of like a global setup, and it would run everywhere, which would cut down the number of echoes all over the place. I'm going to leave it like this for today. So there's stack name. None of this has to change. I've got default values set for my VPC, decider ranges, all of that stuff. So I'm not going to worry about any of that. I have to change the path here, or we'll end up with another global accelerator. I think this might do the trick. Oops, go here. What doesn't it like? Oh, there's that little spacing issue here. Hold on. Multiple schemas. Yeah, see, again, I had Claude generate this for me, so it took some liberties based on my other projects. So it's include and then our other templates. So that should work. Let's see here. So this is, I'm just going to call it a feature added VPC. Yeah, almost like a pre-commit hook, kind of, in the sense that the before script, it will run as it goes through each stage. So not necessarily related directly to the fact that I'm, making a commit. It's running on the server side. But I know what you mean in the sense that that'll run every time I make a commit. This runs on the server before every stage in my CI job definitions. Kind of the same. Let's see how well we did there with all those changes. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a red X by the time we get here. Oh, look at that. I surprised myself. So we ran through the validation stage. These two guys can run in parallel because they're not related, right? And let's see what's happening with our VPC. Okay, it didn't error out. Let's go back. Oh, signed out. Let's try this again. Fix that up. Okay, it's a good sign. Yeah, look at that. It's working away. This VPC is overkill for what it is we're trying to accomplish over the next couple streams. Having said that, kind of goes back comment to what you already mentioned, right? Like I've got these templates built already. It's not fun for me to retype an entire VPC template. It's probably not fun for people who tune into the stream every once in a while to watch me build another VPC template. So it's great to have these sort of a repository of these templates, and I can just use them, right? Saves me from doing that doing the same thing over and over again, but also allows me to deploy something for a customer far quicker, and I can just customize that template, and it's sort of battle tested. I've used it a bunch of times, fixed errors in it over the years, really. Right? Nice and easy. Okay, so let's go VPC. We should have a new VPC starting. So now we've got two. Remember I mentioned I've got one for my class that I'm working on right now. There's our new one. And there's our range. Okay, that's good. I'm going to leave that and let it run as we work on a couple other things. I'm pretty confident. Work smart, not hard. You got it. All right. I'm all for building new things. You know, I am a technology person, so I tend to chase shiny objects. It's a lot of fun. But when it comes to these kinds of things, yeah, no sense in redoing it again, right? Okay, so while we're waiting on that, when I think back to the diagram, we've got a VPC now in theory. What we need are security groups. So we need a security group for our load balancer, and we need a security group for the EC2 instance that is going to sort of house our ramshackle little web server in some way I can just listen on a TCP port. So why don't we create that? And I usually put this in a security folder, and I call it IAM. Not IAM. I'm thinking about two different things. I call it SG. Okay. And we're going to do what we did before. We're going to yank this file. Actually, this skeleton file is already wrong, isn't it? Okay, hang on. Let's back up. I keep saying I'm going to do this, and then I forget. We're going to create a branch, and we're going to call it stream. What's today? 20, is it the 25th? Wow. 25th of June, 25. Okay, so this way we're not working on main. Somebody will comment eventually when they see the YouTube video or something like that. So now we're working off that. That's the first thing. And this skeleton was generated based off of my other demo projects by Claude. But we changed it as we started to work. So we're going to get rid of the spaces. Okay, that's the first thing. And then I'm going to borrow from here. See how we changed the project and we added GitLab path. So I'll just yank these. And we'll add, whoops. We'll add those to our skeleton. And this one we can go away. Okay, so that way we can just copy and paste this. Oh, what did I just do? Okay, no, I'm in the right file. I'm in the skeleton file. Am I in the skeleton file? Doesn't feel like I'm in the skeleton file. All of a sudden. Oh, I must have yanked a bunch of lines. See how I've got, oh boy. Okay, let's see if we can back up. What did I do? Okay. That didn't go as planned. Let's try that again. If we go back here, I want to only get this little chunk. I don't know what I did. It's 6 lines. 6 lines yanked. Okay, let's try it again. Put. Okay, that's better. I don't know what I did. So our project, our GitLab path, we'll leave conditions if we ever need them in the past, or in the past. If we ever need them in the future, we can at least grab them quickly from here, right? No harm in leaving that. And then we've just got our placeholders. This one should go away. We're never going to use that. Okay, perfect. Now, let's do this. We're just going to say fix updated skeleton. Okay, so that's that. Now, let's add what we wanted. Security sg.yaml. And I'll grab this. Put it here. Okay, so what are we describing, or what are we building? Security groups for the GA project. We'll leave the comments. Those can all stay. Since we don't need it, let's pull it out. Now, we need 2 things. So we need security group for our ALB. It should allow... So we're listening on 443 on the Global Accelerator, and we set our set up a target or an endpoint group for that yet. But I'm thinking, to be honest, I don't remember. I think that the global accelerator acts almost like a network load balancer if you configure it for just pass through. I don't think it's going to do anything. So what I'm thinking here is it should allow TCP 443 HTTPS from the global accelerator. Okay. And then we need a security group for our test EC2 instance. It should allow, and in this case, we've got two situations. It needs to allow, we're gonna send decrypted traffic from our load balancer to our EC2 instance. For what we're doing, it's fine. But remember, you can re-encrypt that traffic using a self-signed cert going from the load balancer to your destination or your target. In our case, our EC2 instance, but we won't worry about that. So we need a HTTP, so TCP 80. Let me actually do this the same way. TCP 80 from the ALB. And it also needs to allow TCP, I think we said 9898 from the GA. Okay, we'll say Global Accelerator. So those are the two things we need to create. So let's get this done. Let's do ALB SG. I'm gonna have to look these up. I was trying to use the memory, and it's not happening. You think by now I've created so many security groups, I would remember at least some of the parameters that go into this, but nope. Okay. See that? I was wrong immediately. It's not description, it's group description. Okay. So we're going to say ALB security group for GA demo. Group name, we're going to do the same thing we did before, which I already forget. So I'm just going to put to do there. So security group egress, we're going to leave the default setup, which means allow all outbound traffic. Okay. And we're just going to say security group ingress. So we do want to control this. And I'm going to put a couple placeholders in here, I think. And I'll explain my logic here in a second. Description, allow inbound. What did we say we needed for this? TCP 443 from the global accelerator. Say from port to port I gotta fix my my autocomplete in here. It's really a bit painful. And I'm also going to do, so I got from port to port IP protocol. We're going to say source security group ID. Now, if I left this as it is, it would fail because I've got essentially two sources, right? At first, I've got my CIDR IP up here, and then I've got my source security group. I'm doing this because my memory is that when you create a global accelerator, there is a security group related to those global accelerators. You don't create it. Amazon kind of creates it on your behalf. And I think I'm like pretty sure we can refer to that security group, but we might have to poke around a little bit in the AWS console, maybe some documentation to figure out what that is. Because I hope I'm not misremembering, but it's kind of in my head that exists, but it's just not going from the brain to the keyboard. So I'm going to leave that as a placeholder, and we'll check that later. And while we're working on this, I'm going to say EC2 SG, and we're going to get this one set up as well. Oh boy. Okay, let's do the same thing. We're going to copy. Seems like I'm having some problems here, so let's just copy. Okay, and before I forget, let's remove this guy, and we'll leave that output for the time being. So, and we're just going to call this very creatively EC2 security group for that. We'll leave the placeholder. Now, in this case, I generally do this in alphabetical order. I don't know why, but it's just, again, one of those things. Okay, so there we go. Description. We're going to have a couple rules here. So we're going to say allow inbound TCP 443. All right, so there. And then here we can refer to it. So I'm just going to look up, just like we did for the Global Accelerator, what are the return values? I think it's a ref again, but I'm not sure. What we're looking for here is the security group ID. Yeah, so when you use a ref, it returns the ID of the security group. So perfect. I can just do this. Ref ALB SG. Okay. And again, not sure if I need this, but I'm going to add it anyways just to help it keep straight in my head. ALB SG. This, if you haven't seen this before, is a really great way to create and manage your security groups, to practice sort of from a network perspective, least access or least privilege, right? What we're doing is we're chaining security groups together. So what I'm saying is, in this case, I'm going to say allow inbound traffic to the load balancer from only the Global Accelerator. So in theory, if any of those components, anything that made up that Global Accelerator changes, I'm still allowing the inbound traffic, right? I don't have to manage specific IPs or ranges of IPs. And we're doing the same thing here. So we're basically saying allow TCP 443 HTTPS traffic from anything that is a member of that load balancing security group, which means as our ALB scales out, adds infrastructure components, or scales in, removes those components, I don't need to know about those or care about the IPs, and I don't have to put big ranges like slash whatever my public IPs are, whatever my public subnets are, like slash 24s. I don't have to put big slash 24s in there. I can lock it down to those particular source. In this case, the source of the inbound traffic that's allowed is the security group that's associated with our load balancer. Okay, so that's that guy. And then we said we also needed to allow traffic from the Global Accelerator, if you remember our diagram, which we'll go back to in a second. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll copy this. Is that 5? This is going to be 9898. And this here, we don't know what this is, right? We got to check the documentation. And we're going to say allow TCP 9898 from the GA. Okay. So let's just commit this so we don't lose it. We're going to say feature added SGs. My camera is in, I think they call it AI mode, and I can see it zooming in and zooming out as I'm moving forward. Okay, hopefully, let me zoom out a bit. Again, I'm just a giant head on the screen. That feels a little less in your face. Okay, hopefully that stays as is. So we added SGs, let's say, to our VPC as place holders, right? So it's not actually going to deploy it at this point. Now let's jump over AWS Global Accelerator documentation. Actually, you know what? We've got Q here. Why don't we ask Q? Let's see how Q does for this. I've deployed a global accelerator, and I need to define. Oh, I'm in the process of defining, what are they called? Endpoint groups. I was wondering if I can reference a security group. I better not use that. Security group related to the accelerator. For example, I want to limit traffic to an EC2 instance to the global accelerator, or from the global accelerator. Find in see what it does. I don't know about anybody that's watching live, or if you watch the VOD later on, if you are also finding this. I generally now will ask a Gen AI tool, typically Q, because I find it really good for AWS related stuff, but I'll generally ask it for help. Ooh, I've given it too much permission. Look at what it's doing though. It's changing stuff on us, which I don't like. We'll fix that in a second. I generally ask Q or Gen AI tool rather than running a Google search. Isn't that kind of crazy? Yeah, look, it's going a little nuts here. I don't know what I did. See, I've trusted it a little too much. Okay, hold on. Stop. Okay. We're just gonna level set here. You're absolutely right. Okay, let's see. Global. Let's let it type. Global accelerators don't have security groups like EC2 instances or application load balancers. However, you can definitely restrict traffic to your EC2 instances accepted only. Okay, so use global accelerator IP ranges. AWS publishes specific ranges for our global accelerator uses. You can create a security group that references those IP ranges to restrict access to EC2. And then, okay, so these are the ranges. Now, here's the thing. What if these ranges change, right? Okay, let me ask a follow-up question. What if the ranges change, the GA IP ranges change? Does AWS provide a managed prefix list that I can reference rather than hard coding IP ranges in my SGs? I'm pretty sure it does. Let's see what our buddy Q says. It's thinking about it, maybe? Is it thinking about it? There we go. Unfortunate. I don't necessarily know if I believe it. I don't know why I have this memory, but my memory is that this does exist. I think the first thing we need to do is unwrap what the heck it did here. See what it did? It created a crazy security group in my global accelerator template. So let's just get this thing back to where it should be. Okay, I'm hoping that that's all it changed. Nope, it changed something else. I guess there's our listeners. Yes, we created those. That's fine. Oh, look what it did. It did a bunch of stuff here. It added a DNS name, which I don't care about. Oof. Okay, let's do this. Run a git diff for GA YAML. I want to remove the changes that you made. This is another thing that you gotta be, I learned this the hard way when I was using these things, is these are decent tools, right? But you got to protect yourself against when things like this happen. And that's where something like Git comes into play, right? I was working on a project and I messed it up. It was my fault. And I was relying on Gen AI just a little bit too much, right? I was taking its word for some stuff. It was a bit of a tight timeline, and I kind of was pushing my luck. And I wasn't checking code into my repo as I was going, and it made some changes that I didn't like but didn't notice. And the challenge that I had was, because it wasn't in GitLab, I couldn't go back and just say revert to what was in GitLab. So I ended up spending a fair amount of time going back through it and removing the stuff. So be careful with that. It's doing a lot of stuff here to try to figure it out. It looks like the only part, it looks like the diff is only showing part of the changes. Okay, I can probably do this faster. Hang on. I can probably just do this, right? See here? That's the only change that's left. It added some parameter values. Now, let's see. Just to show you this, if I do /help, I think it is. Let me make this window a little bigger. These are all our different commands. And what I want to do is I want to look at what we're allowing it to do right now. So see /tools. So if I say /tools, this right here, I don't mind it writing, but in my case, I want to have it prompt me and say, this is the change we're going to make. Do you want me to change it? I must have flipped this on doing something earlier. So I'm going to say tools help. And I'm going to say, okay, so I can say tools untrust. What was it? FS write. Okay, so now if I do tools again, see, it's not trusted. So what will happen is, unlike what happened to us there, sorry, my chair is stuck. Okay, well, I'm not moving. Unlike what happened to us just a moment ago, the next time it says, hey, I'll make these changes, I'll get a prompt to say, do you want to allow it to make those changes, yes or no? Okay, so that's crisis averted, and we've reverted the changes back. So let's go over to some documentation. And let's have a quick look at this, because my brain is stuck on the fact that there are security groups for this. Let's do imagine we actually have to do a search for this. Oh, look at this. Here we go. All right, so question. I want to limit access to my endpoints by configuring security groups rules on endpoints. Global Accelerator can have... How old is this? I always like to look at the oldness of something first. Does it have a date on it somewhere? Yeah, this is 2 years ago. In AWS time, that's ancient, right? We're using a standard accelerator. Oh, I hate when something's in your head and I'm like, I'm sure this exists. Let's try it a different way. Let's go back over here. And for some reason, my brain is fixed on a prefix list. So if we go VPC and actually, let's search up here, prefix list. Manage prefix lists. Here's one that I used for a demo. So since we're here in my little demo account, let's clean it out. It probably isn't in use. There we go. Okay. So you can see there's AWS managed prefix lists. It's these guys. So anything that's COM, Amazon, AWS, blah, 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 right? And then this is a customer managed prefix list. I gave it a name. Client IP address preservation allows your applications to use logic that is specific to user IP. So we don't really care about that. I'm gonna go back to our friend over here. Does AWS publish a list of the available AWS managed prefix lists? Yes, there we go. Okay, CLI commands. Now it's even though I said don't trust this, it's able to run AWS commands that are like read only, so it can't change anything in our environment, but it's running this because it's just a read command. Yeah, see, so this is kind of S3 Dynamo, CloudFront, Route 53. What command did it run? So see this here, EC2 managed, describe managed prefix lists. Available in your region. Oh, maybe there's a region thing. Could you run the same command, but this time show me what's available in US East 1? It's like having like having your cube mate, right? You just holler over the cube and ask a quick question. Let's see if it's any different. No, it's pretty much the same. Still no global accelerator. It's poking at me now. It's having fun. As expected. It's even cheeky about it. Global accelerator still does not have a managed prefix list. This confirms. Also like your cube mate, right? I told you I was right. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, yeah. Just I just don't want to believe it. Just don't want to believe it. All right. We're going to concede defeat for now. And what we're going to do is we are going to see, how do we do this? It's just not as clean, is it? Because then I basically have to put a bunch of ranges in here, like for the different IP ranges that, in this case, we're in CA Central 1, so the different IP ranges for the global accelerator in that region. Let's have some fun with QA. Let's have fun with Q. Okay, you win. I believe you. Can you remind me of the IP ranges that AWS uses for the global, I don't know why I put capital, global accelerator in CA Central 1? Oh, global. Okay, global, not regional. Okay. Yeah, see, this is the part that's worrying me. These ranges can change over time. We're gonna do this so we can get our little sort of security group chaining done tonight. Okay, so these are the Global Accelerator IP ranges. So that means what we have to do is just go like this. Can I copy these? Yeah, okay. So now, what's that? 5 lines? Okay. Still not completely convinced, but that'll do the trick. The really crappy part is we have to do the same thing down here. So that means maybe I could do this. Right? So we just need these. We need these. So this is, we can get rid of that. Say 5 yank yank. Let's just put those twice, right? And then we'll delete, delete, and we'll just copy the lines from here because we need these same CIDR ranges. So after IP protocol, we can dump that there. I'm sure there's a better NeoVim way to do this, but it works. And then that goes there. Okay, great. So in theory, this should work. What else can we add to our security groups? I think it supports tags. Yeah. Okay, so we need VPC ID. So we'll do this. VPC ID. And then we are going to, we're going to borrow our tags from our GA template because they should already be there. Because we want to use the same tag structure. So that's these guys. How many lines? 9? Okay, so then let's grab 10 lines here. Whoops. Oh boy. What just happened? Oh crap. I don't know what I did. Getting a little carried away with shortcuts. Yeah, it's making it worse, not better. Okay, hang on. I gotta fix that. I'm actually gonna take all these lines. So that's 15 lines, right? And we're gonna plunk that right here. And then we'll just take, I know this is probably really silly. We're going to delete that. Let's delete these descriptions. Okay, let me save that so I can get it back if I screw it up again. And we were in, what file were we looking at? We were looking at ga.yaml. And I wanted to copy these 9 lines. Put. Okay, there we go. So that's our EC2 group. And then we'll just yank these lines again and try this here. Okay. And I'm going to save that again in case I mess it up. And all we need now are our group names. And I'm going to borrow from GA template again. Because we've already got, see this structure? We want to use this same structure for all of our names. So we'll just go group name. And we're going to just change this to ALBSG. Yank that. And put it here. And change its name. So this is going to be EC2. All right. Oh, one other thing we have to do. Down here, I'm going to add another tag. And we're actually going to grab this same group name and put it here. Right, like that. So I'll say 2 yank. Paste that there. Now, in theory, oh, we're missing another thing. This is the first example of where, if you were early on this stream earlier, I said about this idea of chained stacks, right? So outputs or exports from one stack become imports for another stack. So what we're going to do is we need the VPC ID in order to associate these security groups with the right VPC. So we're going to refer to that. So we're just going to call it a stack reference. And we're just going to say VPC ID, or no, I usually do VPC stack. I don't know why I did that. Let's try that again. Type is string, okay? And then what we're going to do is down here, I forgot this. I got to do this. So we're going to say, we're going to use an intrinsic function called import value. And this is the formatting of this is a little odd. Again, I'm sure there's a different way to do this, but this works. So we're going to say VPC stack. And I'm not actually sure. I need the VPC ID. In theory, that sounds logical, right? Like if I use that naming standard. So what we're going to do is we're just going to check. And if we go to outputs, actually, let's do it like this. I actually see what I did. I just called the output VPC. I think this gives us a VPC return, like the ID. So we're going to do like that instead. So I'll yank that line. And we'll put that there. Okay. So let's get our GitLab CI script. And we have to add a couple lines. So we've got our VPC. We're going to say 2 yank modules. And this is security SG. So we'll just validate that template. Oops. So that's that. And then we need to add this to our demo includes file. So we're going to say, I'm just going to yank this whole thing. We'll add a comment here in a second, but this is just our SG deploy. We'll follow the same naming standard for this, so SG. Now we do need to bring in, oh, look at what I should do it like this, right? I can just go yank put, change that to VPC stack, and change this to SG. And then what we're going to do is down here in the parameter overrides, we're going to say VPC stack equals VPC stack. So this will pull in the stack information, which we then feed in as a parameter and then can use that output or export value as the input into this template, in theory. Okay, so let's commit this. I did a bunch of things together, but that's okay. We'll just call it a feature. Added SG plus updated CI for deploy. Let's push that. Now we are using a branch now, so let's see what happens here. Yeah, I figured. We made a lot of changes there, so I'm not surprised. All right, so it's trying to run the validation on SG, and oh, I've seen this error before. Okay, so see this right here? I think I've got a typo in how I called that intrinsic function. I've done this to myself before. Let's check that one first because it's probably the issue. So I'm going to go back to SG. See right here, this should be, first off, I got to have 2 like that, I think. It's amazing how quickly you get imposter syndrome. Let's try that again. Fix typo in import value function. That's the easiest thing to try first. Okay, great. The validation worked, but it didn't do our deploy because we're working off of a branch now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a merge request. I'll merge it to main, but I'm going to keep this branch until we finish the stream today. So we'll merge this. And now on the main branch, it'll run the validate again, and then our deploy. And we could actually tighten this up a little bit on how this works. Not that it's really required for a small project like this, but it might make sense. Okay, so that's good. What's it doing? Oh, look at that. We got a typo here somewhere. Oh, look at what I did. I know exactly what I did. Let's go back. This is the pain of cutting and pasting. If I go back to our CI script. Oh, sorry, no, I want to go to the deploy. So that's in demo. Look what I did. I didn't change the path. Okay. Now, the other thing we can do here is we could go, I think it's needs, job, VPC stack. I can't remember the exact formatting of this. I'm hoping this is correct. Basically what we're doing here is we're saying the SG stack job relies on the fact that this job's done first. And you can see I screwed these names up. So this should be SG deploy. And this should be VPC deploy. And I'll show you, if I've done this right, I'll show you what happens. Not a big deal in a small project like this. Okay, so that worked. It didn't complain about anything. This guy we're gonna try to help along a bit. Get it deleted. What happened is I tried to create another VPC and I've run out of addresses. These would be most likely, see it's trying to do the NAT gateway, so it needs a public IP address, and I've probably just run out of public IP addresses in this account because there's a service quota or a service limit of, I think it's 5, and that's probably what I've bumped up against. So let's get this is taking a while to delete. Okay. So that's that. Let's try it again. We'll run a merge. Common, are you still here? Oh, wrong place actually. Keep our branch for now. Oh man. Modules, networking. Oh my God, I'm not paying enough attention now. I'm running out of gas here. So let's do this. Modules, security. Oops, I almost did it again. Look. I think if I get this deployed, we're going to call it a night, and then we'll pick it up next week. So this is CI. Fixed path issue for SG template. Okay, that was quick. Let's run another merge. So see what that did is now when I put that needs statement in there, we're basically saying that don't deploy the SG templates until the VPC templates have been deployed because we're going to reference the other one. And like I said, it's not really a big deal in a small little project like this, but you can imagine if you've got more and more templates, it might make a lot of sense to kind of order these and tell GitLab the order in which you want things to be deployed. Especially if you've got sort of limited capacity as far as the number of jobs your runner can actually execute concurrently. Okay, so that worked, and there's our SG. So now we've got our VPC. So we've got our global accelerator. Actually, let's go back to our diagram. That might be a better way to summarize this. So what we have at this point is we've deployed our global accelerator. And if I was to change this diagram just a little bit, right, because this is going to look bad now. Not that it looked great before. This is a VPC, which I didn't have in my original diagram. So we've got a global accelerator that's deployed. We've deployed our VPC, and we've deployed these security groups with a little bit of fun with our conversation with Q. You know what? How long have we been at? We've been at it for about 90-ish minutes, roughly. I think what we're going to do is we're going to call it here, and we'll pick this up next week and see next week if we can get our load balancer and our EC2 deployed and have that traffic successfully routed through our global accelerator. So thanks very much for joining me tonight. It's good to be back, and we'll see you all next Wednesday, 7 p.m. for another Let's Build session. And if you're interested in this kind of info, I also have a weekly newsletter. You can follow it, or you can find a link to it here in the outro. I'll share the outro. You can scan a QR code. Weekly newsletter, just give you more tips and tricks and highlights from the streams. So hope to see you again soon, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye for now.